My name is Daisy, and every single morning, I make sure the front entrance is absolutely spotless. I keep the floor beets watered, and the estate looking perfect. It's just a normal day for a maid of the Weatherwoods family. Technically, watering plants is the gardener's job, but our master is so cheap that the three of us have to do everything ourselves, even with things screaming for mercy. In my watering bucket, I've got to stay focused. Wait, who's that at the gate? Baron Feathergale is back at the gate, acting like he owns the place, but Daisy isn't having any of it. She walks right up to him and gives him the same answer he's heard a dozen times already. This manor is not for sale, so why does he keep coming back? Feathergale has finally lost his cool, and he's storming right past Daisy, shouting that he's not leaving until he sees the new viscount. He's tired of the same old excuses, and he's not wrong about this place. The villagers are calling it a ghost manor because it's falling apart, with only 3 servants to run it. Daisy tries to block the door, but the Baron is already inside, and things are about to get ugly. Feathergale is making a scene, shouting that his late friend would be heartbroken to see this place falling apart. It's been 4 years since the Viscount died in the Magic War, and the Baron can't help but get sentimental. Even Daisy feels the sting. Looking at that old portrait, she's starting to miss him too. But what really happened 4 years ago? Daisy tells the Baron to leave, but he's not listening. Instead, he corners another maid to dig for some real answers. He wants to know where the new Viscount has been for the last 3 years, but her reply is ice cold. He hasn't been away at all. The Baron tries another angle, asking if the man is too sick to even step outside, but she just shuts him down. He's perfectly healthy. These short answers are weird, and the Baron knows it. What are these servants actually hiding? Feathergale tries a different tactic, claiming the late Viscount personally asked him to look after the new master of the house. He puts on a whole performance about his duty and responsibility, hoping to finally get some info on what's going on inside, but Daisy isn't moved at all. She just gives him a flat, "Everything's fine." The Baron is absolutely fuming. He can't believe a mere maid is being this disrespectful, but he's about to find out. She's not just any servant. The Baron is still thinking about how Daisy doesn't know her place as a servant, but he's the one who's about to get a reality check. Out of nowhere, she delivers a massive slap that sends him flying straight across the room. The other servants can't believe what they're seeing. A head maid just laid out a nobleman with 1 hit. Feathergale is down for the count, and things just got way more complicated. How is she going to explain this one? While the Baron's soul is practically leaving his body, Daisy stays completely calm. She even takes a second to lecture the younger maid. She tells her that a maid always needs to be patient, and that she can handle these sickly raccoons without any help at all. The other servants are stunned by how casually she's insulting a nobleman, but Daisy doesn't seem to care who's listening. That's when a mysterious voice calls out from the shadows. It looks like someone saw exactly how she fights. The secret is out, and now Daisy has to face whoever was watching from the hallway. The mysterious attacker doesn't even finish his sentence before Daisy shuts him up with a brutal punch to the face. She doesn't stop there, taking out the Baron next, while claiming she's actually being very patient right now. Her junior isn't buying it, especially when Daisy says her right hand is just going through a rebellious phase. It's a ridiculous excuse for someone who just laid out 2 grown men without breaking a sweat. But with her skills exposed, Daisy's quiet life as a maid is officially over. What's her next move? Daisy is still playing along, blaming her own hand for the mess she made, and promising to scold it later, like it's some kind of pet. But the younger maid is already thinking ahead. She's got a shovel ready, and wants to know if she should bury the bodies. Daisy acts totally shocked, telling her not to say such horrible things, but her alternative is way more terrifying. She thinks burying them is a waste of time. Instead, she wants to cut off their heads and hang them as a warning. It turns out the head maid is much more ruthless than anyone ever imagined. Is there anyone left who can actually stop her? Daisy decides to play it safe and tells the younger maid to just sit the men down outside the manor, like nothing ever happened. She claims it's all self-defense, and that the family will take care of everything if they just stay calm and follow her lead. The younger maid doesn't really have a choice. She follows the orders, because that's what you do when your boss tells you to. She really wanted to believe that everything would be okay, but looking back now, she realizes how naive she actually was. She's starting to see that following Daisy's orders might be the biggest mistake she's ever made. What's waiting for her next? So much for Daisy's plan. Everything went south fast, and now the younger maid is stuck in a room, answering for what happened. They say being a maid is just another word for constant hardship, and she's finally starting to see why. Despite being told it was all self-defense, the Baron didn't see it that way at all. He's actually suing her for assault and intimidation, leaving her to face the legal mess alone. She's in deep trouble now, and the peaceful life she was promised is officially a nightmare. How is she going to get out of this? To understand how she got here, we have to rewind a bit to just a few days ago. She was just another number, waiting in a long line for a chance at a new life. The interviewer said, "Nice to meet you," but she couldn't help thinking, this girl is absolutely stunning. "Now then, what's your name?" She introduced herself, Daisy Fager. The interviewer froze. "Wait a second, that name rings a bell. Isn't that the same last name as the legendary hero, Anders Fager?" Daisy didn't miss a beat. "It's a common name." The interviewer moved on, noting her height and her family history. "You're pretty tall for a girl, which is actually a huge plus for the job you're after. But what kind of job needs someone like her?" The interviewer asked. "Why do you want to be a maid?" Daisy was brutally honest. "Money." Then came the final question. "What kind of boss are you looking for?" She didn't want someone kind. She wanted a total nightmare, a vicious employer, in a mansion so dreadful, nobody would notice if someone died. This was exactly what Daisy was looking for. The interviewer was thrilled. "You've hit the jackpot. It's a prestigious mansion in the heart of the city." She handed over the address, like it was a golden ticket. But then, she leaned in with a warning. "Just try to last at least 1 week before you quit." The interviewer didn't care. She just wanted her referral fee. But when Daisy arrived, the place looked sketchy, like a lair for demons. Even the doorbell was broken, and the whole mansion gave off a creepy vibe. She stood there, wondering what to do next. Should she go in, or just wait for a sign? An hour passed, and it felt like Daisy was being ghosted. She was starting to lose her cool, shaking the gate, just to see if anyone was home. Then, the heavy doors finally creaked open. A woman in a maid outfit stepped out with an apology. "Are you Daisy Fager? I'm the head maid here, at the Weatherwoods estate." The head maid was strict, and she started the training. The second they met, she corrected Daisy's manners, and warned her to stop shaking the gates. As they walked inside, the mansion looked massive, but it felt like a ghost town. "There's only one master here, and only 3 employees to run this entire place." Daisy was starting to realize this job was going to be stranger than she thought. The head maid laid out the ground rules, salary on the first, and long working hours. But then, she showed Daisy her room, and it was huge. "It's probably the biggest maid's room you'll ever see," she said. Daisy was supposed to rest and change her clothes, but there was a catch. The head maid turned back with one final warning. "There's just one thing you absolutely must remember, and if anyone asks, just say he's out." That's the official cover story. Daisy nodded, but the head maid demanded a verbal answer. Then came the big one, the rule Daisy couldn't break: never enter the master's bedroom. Once she was finally alone, Daisy collapsed onto her bed, exhausted but satisfied. This place was good enough. Now she just had to work and keep a low profile. The clock is ticking. Daisy has 3 years to find some secret items. If she fails, she's a dead woman. It's as simple as that. But for now, she's just a workhorse in a totally crazy house. The head maid is thrilled, saying Daisy was worth every penny they spent. Daisy finally gets it. She wasn't just hired, she was sold like a cash cow. The sun finally went down, and the head maid called it a day. Daisy was starving, and the thought of food was the only thing on her mind. But the second she tasted that soup, everything changed. "This is bad," she thought. "Really bad." The head maid noticed something was off, and called her name. Daisy already polished off 2 full bowls of soup, and she knew it looked bad. The head maid just watched, admitting she'd never seen a maid quite like Daisy before. Then she asked the one question Daisy wasn't ready for. "How did you end up here?" That simple question hit Daisy like a ton of bricks, bringing back memories of the fire. How did she end up doing this? The answer was buried in the ashes of her past. The memories are heavy, full of blood and secrets from a life she left behind. The head maid sees the look on Daisy's face and tells her she doesn't have to talk. She thinks Daisy is carrying some deep tragic sorrow hidden away in her heart. But Daisy's just sitting there, thinking about how she was actually just gonna say, "It's because I'm broke, I have no home, and I really need the money." Daisy decided to keep her mouth shut about being totally broke. She didn't want them treating her like a slave, but the reality was worse. The work was non-stop, and she was so exhausted, she passed out in her clothes. By the second day, she felt less like a maid, and more like a farm animal. But on the third day of this grueling routine, something finally snapped. Daisy was fast asleep, completely unaware that she wasn't alone anymore. Out of the shadows, a hooded figure appeared, holding a sharpened blade. He didn't hesitate, and before she could even realize the danger, he finally showed up to finish the job he started long ago. The blade came down, and just like that, everything went dark. Lou didn't come to kill her, He came with a job offer. Get up, Maid. If you want to live, you're going to be my spy. He wanted her to watch every move the viscount made, but Daisy only had one simple question. Why? Lou thought he was in control, but Daisy wasn't having it. She didn't just ignore his threat, she took him down in one hit. While he was still reeling, she searched him for the real prize, and found exactly what she needed. A merciful mouthful, hidden right on him. It was a suicide pill, the kind used by the elite assassination guilds. Lou couldn't believe his eyes, as the maid he tried to threaten suddenly turned the tables. She didn't let up for a second, looming over him, with that same haunting question. Step by step, the pressure closed in on him, until he could barely breathe. This terrifying aura was not something any human could possess. Lou finally realized the truth. This was no ordinary maid, he was just a mercenary, following orders from the guild, without even knowing the client. But the real shock came next. He wasn't the first one sent, he was at least the third. Everything started to click. The previous servants didn't just quit, they were running for their lives. Daisy asked the one question that changed everything. What happened to the others? Lou claimed he didn't know, he just forced them to take an oath. But this wasn't a normal promise, it was forbidden magic, that used the soul as collateral. Break the rules, and your life was over. The truth was finally out. Those maids didn't run away, they were executed by the spell. Lou was absolutely desperate, begging for his life, and promising to disappear forever. He even offered to take the same deadly oath of obedience. But Daisy wasn't buying it. She shut him down with a single word. Nope. Now his life is in her hands, and she's wondering if it's just easier to end him. Daisy played the part perfectly, the loyal head maid, who hated hearing anything horrible, but that was just a mask, to hide what she was really doing. Late at night, the act finally drops. She stood by the window, looking out over the quiet estate, with a lot on her mind. The sun was coming up, but the mystery was only getting darker. It started as a quiet morning, until the gossip started. Someone new was moving in, right next door, to a house that was supposed to be empty. Daisy froze. This wasn't part of the plan. If that house wasn't abandoned, then everything she knew was a lie. She didn't waste a second, giving a blunt excuse, before rushing out to see who exactly her new neighbors were. The other maids were already scolding her for being so blunt. Daisy knew she'd messed up. She was getting careless, and letting her mask slip. She didn't have time to argue. She rushed through the halls, ignoring everything else, until she reached the window. She had to see it for herself. Was someone really moving in, or was this something much more dangerous? Daisy couldn't believe her eyes. That guy from last night was standing right there, acting like nothing happened. But he wasn't the only one. Down in the garden sat a man she didn't recognize. Lou looked calm and focused, until he suddenly looked up, right at her window. Did he just sense her watching? This neighborhood was getting way too crowded, and way too dangerous. Daisy could tell right away, this guy was dangerous. She decided to play it safe, and just forget everything that happened the night before. But her plan to stay away didn't even last a day, because there he was, standing right in front of her. Lou smiled and introduced himself as the new gardener and cook. He wasn't just a neighbor anymore, he was her new coworker. And just like that, the pieces were all in place. This was the very first time Daisy stood face to face with Lou. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Now the real game begins. Daisy didn't hold back. She just dropped the hammer and said someone was fired. Her coworker was totally lost, thinking Daisy meant herself, but she had a different target. No, that suspicious guy over there. She pointed right at Lou, and just like that, his time was up. Lou was definitely making waves, but Daisy wasn't buying it. She wanted him gone immediately. Her coworker told her to chill, since he'd only been there a day. Then she dropped a truth bomb. You're just as weird as he is, Miss Daisy. Daisy didn't like that one bit. She's got her own secrets to keep, and the last thing she needs is to be compared to him. Daisy thinks he's suspicious, but nobody else seems to care, because Lou is literally glowing. He's so ridiculously good looking, it's actually giving people a total mental shock. But Daisy isn't falling for it. She's looking past the sparkles, and wondering what's really going on with his personality. Lou finally introduces himself, and the head maid is already completely losing her cool. She's so starstruck, she can barely get a word out, without stuttering like crazy. Lou just plays it smooth, explaining he's the new cook and gardener. But while she's swooning, Daisy is standing right there, not saying a single word. She's the only one who isn't falling for this guy's perfect act. Lou is definitely not humble. He's calling himself a masterpiece, while trashing the entire estate. He knows he's way too good to be working in a dump like this, and he's making sure they know it. The head maid is so distracted, she almost misses the fact that he's straight up insulting them. But then his focus shifts, and he locks onto Daisy, like he's looking for something. He's done playing nice, and now he's sizing her up to see what she's really about. Lou is being a total jerk, mocking Daisy by calling her Miss Maid with zero respect. He's acting like he's the boss, even though he just got here, and he's clearly trying to get a rise out of her. The head maid is already sold, thinking his only crime is being way too handsome. But Daisy isn't falling for it. She knows that pretty face is hiding something dangerous. She's keeping her guard up, because in a place like this, nobody is ever who they say they are. Lou is playing a dangerous game, living right across the street, with an assassin by his side. It's the perfect setup for a spy, and the head maid knows exactly what he's up to. She looks like she's about to drop some heavy news, but then she completely pivots. Instead of a secret mission, she just tells Daisy to go and scrub the windows. The tension is building, but for now, there's still work to be done. Daisy is connecting the dots, while she's stuck doing chores, and it's not looking good. She knows Lou is a spy, but she can't say a word without looking suspicious herself. Besides, the head maid is blinded by all the money Lou is saving them, so she's not gonna listen anyway. It's a total mess, and Daisy realizes that money is the most dangerous weapon here. She's done waiting around. It's time to have a real talk and make Lou spill his guts. Daisy is done playing nice. She bursts through the window to catch Lou off guard. She demands to know who he actually is, but Lou just plays it cool. He tries to act smart, repeating his name like she's the one who's confused. But Daisy isn't backing down. She doesn't want a name. She wants the real truth. Lou just gives a little laugh, like he's been waiting for her to finally figure it out. Lou tries to flip the script, asking if she wants to get a little more personal, but Daisy isn't having it. She tells him to stop acting like a snake and just talk. She wants to know his real name and why he's even here. But Lou has other plans. He steps in way too close and whispers the last thing she ever expected to hear. He claims he's only there because he's her biggest fan, and now things just got weird. Lou reveals the real reason. He's been following her around, and it's because he saw everything. He watched her tie up a pervert in the middle of the night, and he was actually impressed. Daisy can't believe this guy broke into a whole mansion just because he was curious. But before she can even argue, Lou pulls the ultimate jerk move and yells for the head maid. He's framing her for slacking off, and Daisy realizes he's not just suspicious, he's a total nightmare. Lou's petty little stunt actually worked, and now Daisy is in deep trouble. The head maid heard everything, and she's making it clear that slacking means no dinner. Daisy worked her tail off to stay on her good side, but the meal was still trash. Now we're back in the present, where the jokes are over, and the real business starts. Feathergale wants an update on the lawsuit situation, and things are getting serious. To keep a long story short, the Baron dropped the charges, so the legal drama is over. But people are still digging into who Daisy really is, and she's got a lot on her mind. She's trying to process it all, when Lou shows up out of nowhere with some terrifying questions. He looks her right in the eye and asks if she's the one who killed the Baron. Then he takes it a step further, asking if she buried the body, and now the vibe is totally dead. Lou thinks Daisy is being way too blunt with people, so he decides to give her a lesson. He starts acting out this insane dramatic speech about being her slave until he dies. He even suggests she should ask to lick someone's feet, just to show proper gratitude. Then he actually has the nerve to ask her to give it a shot and repeat those crazy lines. Daisy is just standing there, completely done with his life, realizing this guy is a total freak. The investigators can't believe it. They're just letting them walk away, but their hands are tied. The Baron dropped all the charges, which makes no sense after the scene he just made. But the higher UPS don't care about the Baron. They only want one thing. They have secret orders to dig into Daisy's past, no matter what it takes. Because if the rumors are true, that Maid is a survivor from the ruins of Queen Island. Lou isn't about to let her off the hook that easily. He's looking for a little credit. He leans in close, reminding her that he's the one who just saved her skin. He says with a smirk, even a dog knows how to show some gratitude. He's basically calling her out, waiting to see if she's really gonna be that stubborn. Daisy knows she's trapped. She takes a breath and finally starts to say it. Daisy finally forces it out, but she's clearly hating every single second of it. She gives him a thank you, and even adds a sir, just to get him off her back. But Lou isn't looking for just a polite word. He's got something else in mind. He tells her straight up, if she's actually grateful, she needs to pay him back. Daisy doesn't even blink. She just looks him in the eye and tells him she's broke. She's not playing his games, but Lou looks like he's just getting started. Lou isn't looking for cash. He's actually trying to give her some advice. He tells her to stop being so reckless and start using her head. Then he drops a weird one, telling her that next time she needs to hide a body, she should just call him. Daisy is completely losing it. She's got no idea why he thinks she'd ever do that. Before things get too heated, another maid rushes over, looking like she's seen a ghost. She's panicking about the Baron and the charges he filed, but Lou just plays it cool. He acts like it's nothing, but they both know this is far from over. The head maid is stressed out. She tried to handle things quietly, but the Baron just won't let it go. Suddenly a stomach growls, and the mood completely shifts. It's time to get dinner started. Lu sees his chance to shine. He turns on the charm, and offers to help in the kitchen. He's acting like a total pro, promising to show off his skills, just for the head maid. She's totally falling for it, but Daisy is standing there, watching him like a hawk. She knows exactly what he's doing, calling him a sly fox, for playing everyone like a fiddle. At this rate, he's gonna have the whole house wrapped around his finger. Daisy is on high alert. She knows she can't let herself fall for his nonsense again. She's telling herself to stay sharp and keep it together, no matter what he does. But Lu is putting on a show. He's in the kitchen, acting like a world-class chef. He's chopping and seasoning, with way too much style, making the whole thing look easy. He finishes with a flourish, and serves up a perfect meal, telling the head maid to enjoy. She's completely blown away, and Daisy can already tell her plan to stay focused is officially in trouble. Lu is acting all humble, saying he just kept it simple with the potatoes he brought. But the head maid is absolutely loving it. She says it's the best meal she's had in years. She even feels a bit guilty for hiring a chef this good at only half pay. Lu can't help himself though. He starts teasing Daisy, calling her slow as a tortoise for taking forever with the peeling. He says he could've served the food way sooner if she'd just moved faster. Daisy is totally fuming, but she can't even argue because the food is just that good. She's stuck there, blaming herself for being slow, while he wins everyone over, one bite at a time. The head maid tells Daisy to slow down and enjoy the meal, since nobody's going to steal it. But Daisy is distracted. She's trying to figure out how Lu pulled this off. She starts imagining the wildest scenarios about what he did to the Baron. Did he literally roast the guy to make those legal charges disappear into thin air? She even wonders if Lu is secretly a high-ranking noble, hiding his true identity. Lu just smiles, asking why she'd think something like that. Then he starts listing all his best qualities, from being wealthy and handsome to being incredibly intellectual. He's got a massive ego, but at least he's honest about his high sense of self-worth. Daisy just keeps eating, thinking he's definitely a little too self-aware. Lu is really laying it on thick. He tells Daisy he's impressed. She can actually speak in full sentences. He tells her to keep it up, so she doesn't end up looking like a total simpleton. Daisy is just sitting there, shoving food in her face, trying to process the insult. She's actually fuming inside, hating the fact that he's the reason she's talking so much lately. Lu sees her staring him down, and totally misreads the situation, asking if she wants his stew too. Daisy is ready to explode, but then she looks at the bowl, and has a change of heart. She still can't stand the guy, but she decides the stew is innocent, and there's no way she's passing it up. Lu decides to call it a night, since he lost his dinner to Daisy, but he makes sure to mention he's billing for the overtime. The head maid lets him go, but Daisy is still sitting there, and she can't shake this feeling that something is seriously off. The food is amazing, but working with someone this suspicious is starting to get under her skin. She's got two theories about who he really is, and neither of them are good. Maybe he's like that assassin who snuck in just to keep tabs on Viscount Weatherwoods, or maybe it's even worse, and he's actually an investigator who's been sent to track her down. He might know everything about her secret past, and he's finally closed in on his target. Daisy stands by the window, staring out into the night, as her theories start to feel a lot more like reality. She's stuck on that second idea, that Lu is actually here for her, and he's just waiting for the right moment to strike. She wonders just how likely that possibility really is, and the thought of it is enough to keep her awake. If he really is an investigator, then her life in this manner is about to get a whole lot more dangerous. The night was quiet, but Daisy couldn't rest. She woke up suddenly, whispering the one name she needed to protect: Andert. The orders kept coming, but Andert was already gone. He whispered a final goodbye, and drew his sword. He wasn't running away, he was heading straight into a nightmare, and this time, he wasn't planning on losing. The memory hit her like a sudden explosion. Daisy woke up in the dark, trying to catch her breath. Everything was quiet, but her mind was racing. She sat there alone, wondering the same thing, over and over. Does Lu know? It all goes back 14 years, to a war that almost ended everything. The great magician Mephisto wanted to live forever, and he didn't care who he had to kill to do it. But someone stood in his way, to protect the fate of humanity. The question is, who was the one who actually saved us? Everyone knows Andert Fager, the legendary hero, and the Emperor's greatest sword. But here's the real story. Andert is actually me. I know what you're thinking. How can a maid be a famous general? It's a long story, but it all started when my brother died, defending our home. I couldn't let his name die with him, so I became him instead. To keep the lie going, she used ancient magic to physically turn herself into a man, and lived as a soldier for years. But after finally taking down Mephisto, she was sure it was all over. she was ready to die on that battlefield, until she opened her eyes, and realized she was back in her original body. Now she's stuck in a world that thinks its greatest hero is dead. For years have passed since that war, but there's a catch. She only has 3 years left to live, and this death sentence is seriously messing with her sleep. She can't afford to get fired, just because she's too tired to work, so she's making a choice. It's time to find RU, and get some real answers, because if she's going to die, she's not doing it as a sleep-deprived maid. Daisy made it over the wall, without breaking a sweat, but now she's got a choice to make. Should she be polite and knock, or just smash the whole door down? Old habits die hard, and she's not exactly the patient type. She's heading inside one way or another, and whoever's behind that door better be ready for her. Before Daisy can even take a step, someone's already waiting for her. It's Lou, but he's looking a lot more professional than the last time they met. He asks if he startled her, and mentions his master knew exactly when she'd show up. Daisy's completely caught off guard. Since when did this guy start working as a butler? And more importantly, who's the master pulling the strings? Lou has a special message, straight from the master himself, but it's not exactly a warm welcome. He tells Daisy she's wasting her time, and should go back to peeling potatoes. That was the wrong thing to say. Daisy snaps and goes straight for his throat, while Lou tries to save himself, shouting that he's just the messenger. She's not buying it though. Now she's starting to wonder if these two are just playing games with her. Lou reminds Daisy that she's the one who locked him up in the first place, but he claims he's staying here, completely of his own free will. He's traded his freedom for a suit. He says it's only natural for the weak to follow the strong, and describes the master as someone truly terrifying. But there's more to this place than just a scary boss. The entire estate is wrapped in high-level magic, making it impossible for anyone to see what's happening inside. Lou admits he's just laying low to stay off the guild's radar, but Daisy's focused on something else. The magic protecting this estate is on a completely different level. She couldn't even detect it. And if Feathergale can terrify a seasoned assassin like Lou, then he's way more dangerous than he looks. Daisy realizes her gut feeling was spot on from the start. She hasn't touched a sword since returning to this body, so picking a fight with Lou would have been a total disaster. She's safe for now, but how long can she survive in a house full of monsters? Lou's just trying to stay alive, so Daisy figures he's telling the truth. But if the master isn't the client, then who's really pulling the strings? Daisy's starting to wonder if the master is actually the one who hired the assassins, but Lou isn't so sure about that. He says the boss doesn't seem like the type to use a guild. One thing is certain though, the master is definitely obsessed with the Weatherwoods family. He even knew Daisy was coming long before she ever arrived. Daisy decides it's time to make things official. She proposes a deal to share whatever secrets they both manage to dig up. Lou tries to push back, but Daisy isn't taking no for an answer. She sets the meeting time and forces him to shake on it. They're officially partners now, but Lou has one more very important question. He needs to know the best way to wash blankets. Is he actually a top assassin, or just a really dedicated butler? Daisy spent all day yesterday keeping a close eye on him, but she didn't find a single thing. It's time to stop hiding and just confront him directly. Daisy walked right up to him. Hey, I've got something for you. Lou looked down at his hand, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Lou actually thought she was handing him a love letter, and tried to turn her down gently, but Daisy was fuming. What are you even talking about? He finally opened the note, only to find a detailed report on every suspicious thing he's done. Lou didn't even look worried. Instead he mocked her for being so obsessed with him. Daisy couldn't believe his nerve, especially since he acts like he's some kind of perfect prince. But when she tried to call him out, he just brushed her off like it was nothing. Daisy wanted answers right now, but Lou just handed her a pot full of dirt. He told her to grow a flower, and only then would he talk, because as it turns out, his true identity is a massive secret. Lou wasn't about to give up his secrets for free, so he gave her an ultimatum: either grow that flower, or pay him 500 gold. That's more than she'd earn in 100 years. So Daisy had no choice. She's taking the deal, but she's definitely not happy about being played like this. Lou was acting way too friendly, even patting her on the head, like they were actually a couple. But before Daisy could snap, the head maid caught them, and she wasn't happy at all. Dating coworkers is strictly banned, and now they're both on the supervisor's radar. Daisy tried to play it off, but it looks like the trouble is just beginning. The head maid wasn't kidding. One more mistake and Daisy would lose part of her paycheck. She got sent to the market to clear her head and buy supplies, but the stress was still there. She realized that chasing Lou was putting her entire job at risk, while he didn't seem to care at all. So for the sake of her wallet, she's calling off the investigation, at least for now. Daisy tried to convince herself that her suspicions about Lou were just in her head, but her focus shifted when she saw a vendor selling some really sad vegetables. The produce looked terrible, and the old lady running the stall looked even worse. Daisy couldn't just walk away, so she asked for 7 potatoes, just to help her out. The old lady finally looked up, happy to see her very first customer of the entire day. Daisy headed back to the mansion, hoping Lou could actually cook these sprouted potatoes. But then she noticed something. The old lady gave her an extra one, probably by mistake. She turned around to return it, but stopped right in her tracks when she saw a stranger approaching. Someone was cornering the old lady, asking how much money she'd made today, and by the sound of it, this wasn't a friendly visit. The stranger was just a thug, using some fake union fee as an excuse to rob the old lady. When she tried to refuse, he actually got violent and started making a scene. He told her to get out of his territory or else, but he didn't notice who was watching. Daisy had seen enough, and her entire vibe changed from a helpful maid to something lethal. She told them to stop right there, unless they all wanted to end up in the trash. The thug didn't look impressed. He just saw a maid standing in his way. He got right in her face, threatening to make sure she never walked the street again. The old lady was terrified, begging Daisy to just run away while she still could. But Daisy didn't move an inch. She just reached into her basket and smashed an egg on his head. Now the big tough guy was standing there covered in yolk, looking like a complete joke. Daisy didn't waste any more time. She landed a punch so hard, it sent the guy flying. He landed headfirst in a trash can, exactly where she said he was going to end up. His friends didn't want any smoke. They just grabbed the bin and ran for their lives. With the street finally quiet, Daisy went back to being the polite maid everyone knew. The old lady was overwhelmed, thanking her over and over for saving her livelihood. Daisy wanted to know who those guys actually were, so she asked the old lady. Turns out they were heroes once, a vigilante group from the war, called Piece of Land. But once the war ended, they turned into a greedy mob, extorting everyone for protection. If you don't pay up, they make your life a nightmare, just like they tried today. Daisy just listened and smiled, like she'd finally found exactly what she was looking for. Daisy just stood there, with a look that said she wasn't done yet. Is that so? She asked quietly, but her tone changed completely. Whatever she's planning next, it's definitely not going to be good news for those thugs. The real hunt is only just beginning. It's a strange thing, and it's only getting darker. A passing merchant warned that this whole area is under their thumb. Even the police might be in on it. Pubs used to be a sanctuary where people could just be human for a while. But now, thugs are running the show under a fake union name. Actually, this is perfect timing. I'll just use those guys to get what I need. Sneaking out at midnight is definitely against the rules for a maid like her, but anything is better than getting caught and scolded. Wait, did the air just get cold? It feels like someone is standing right behind her. Daisy scanned the room, but her targets were nowhere to be found. The bartender tried to kick her out immediately, but then a massive shadow stepped in. He claimed he knew her, and that's never a good sign. The guy finally realized where he'd seen her before. She's the one who smashed his brother's face in. Daisy wasn't even worried. She just saw more trash that needed cleaning up. But then the bartender pulled out a shotgun. This just went from a bar fight to a death trap. The bartender thought a shotgun would make her stay quiet and behave. He was dead wrong. Daisy gave him a hole of his own with a glass bottle. The rest of the thugs didn't stand a chance against her. Now she's just waiting for the next person brave enough to try her. The tough guys were completely broken and begging for answers. They wanted to know who this woman really was. Daisy just pointed at the portrait of the legendary hero. She's the one who saved the world, and she's not happy about how things look now. The hero is back, and she's got 3 years to finish one last mission. Daisy has a simple rule: bad food makes her sick, and these thugs are ruining the local market. To her, collecting protection money is basically a death sentence. The guys try to act tough by mentioning a group called the Buried Rat, but Daisy's never heard of them, and she doesn't really care. That's when a stranger stepped out of the shadows to explain exactly who she's dealing with. The Buried Rat isn't some small-time gang. They're a massive network operating in the shadows across 13 countries. They're known for being ruthless and secretive, with a leader nobody has ever seen. The stranger didn't think a guy like the bartender could ever be part of an elite group like that. But then, the bartender pulled out a special guild coin as proof. It looks like Daisy just picked a fight with a much bigger enemy than she expected. The coin was the real deal, which meant the bartender wasn't just bluffing. The stranger warned Daisy that even a small branch of a guild like this is better left alone. But Daisy saw things a little differently. To her, a pawn with connections is way more useful than some random thug. She wants to use them to take over the village. But the stranger is worried they're walking into a trap. The stranger wanted to know what Daisy's real plan was, but she just gave him a knowing look. He finally agreed to help, calling her Maid. As they stood together, like a team of villains, the thugs below could already tell things were about to get really ugly for them. Daisy was surprised. The quiet guy had so much to say, but he just told her he only speaks when it's actually worth it. Lud had finally made it official. It was time to get to work. He looked at the group and said, "To celebrate our new coalition, let's start our first mission." The deal was sealed, but nobody knew what they were really walking into. Lud had asked if she was looking for that specific item from before. Daisy nodded and said, "It's the Eye of Dion Ket, a relic that can bring back the dead." She didn't know where it was, but then she remembered something that changed everything. The master had been asking about that same relic just days ago. Now she couldn't help but wonder, what was he really planning to do? According to the assassin, they found a travel guide hidden in Lu's bedroom. There was even a bookmark on the exact page about the Eye of Dion Ket. If that's true, it all starts to make sense. There's no way a guy who's clearly that wealthy would work here as a gardener. He's definitely hiding something, and now she knew exactly what he was after. Back at the estate, Lu was busy playing his part while searching for any clues about the Eye of Dion Ket. He noticed Daisy watching him and couldn't help but tease her for staring a bit too long. She realized right then that he was way too sharp to be just a regular worker. But as she walked away, she told the other maids that the seeds were already planted. Whatever she's planning, it's definitely about to get messy. Daisy couldn't take her eyes off that book Lu was holding, wondering if it actually held a clue about the eye. The other maids noticed the tension and asked if he'd done something to upset the head maid. Lu just joked that maybe he was just too handsome for his own good, but Daisy wasn't having any of it, and hit him with a massive list of chores he'd been ignoring. He realized right then he hadn't finished a single one, and he was in serious trouble. Daisy was busy being her usual strict and cold-hearted self, threatening to skip everyone's meals if they didn't get back to work. Lu watched her from the side, thinking she might actually be the coldest woman he'd ever met. He leaned in and asked if she'd picked a name for the seeds she just planted. Daisy didn't see the point, but Lu warned her that, without a little bit of affection, those plants wouldn't even sprout. He insisted she give it a name, because apparently, even flowers need to feel loved to actually survive. Lu didn't seem to mind that she wasn't interested in his real identity, and just teased her one last time before heading out. Daisy stayed behind, staring at the empty pot and thinking about that name he told her to pick. But as night fell, the mood completely changed, and she reached for her blade. She had a few guests to take care of first before she could worry about naming any flowers. Whatever's coming next, it's definitely not going to be a peaceful night at the estate. The fight was over before it even really started, and Daisy was already sitting on top of her attackers. Just a few minutes ago, these guys thought they were the ones in control, trying to act all tough and give her orders, but they didn't even get a full sentence out before she shut them down with 2 quick hits. She realized these assassins were from the buried rats, and they were getting desperate. Sending 2 people this time was a bold move, but it clearly wasn't enough to handle a maid like her. Daisy decided to just throw the trash out, literally tossing the assassins right out the window. She figured they'd be useful as free labor for the neighbor, so she jumped out after them without a second thought. But she ended up landing right in front of Feathergale, who was just trying to have a quiet smoke on the balcony. Feathergale couldn't believe what she was seeing and had to ask what the hell was going on. It's safe to say this wasn't the kind of late-night visit she was expecting. Feathergale didn't even flinch at the sight of the spies tied up in a neat little bundle. She just looked at them and asked who they were. Daisy was a total mess, trying to explain the situation, while her boss calmly asked if she'd finished them off. When Daisy said she'd only knocked them out, the room went dead silent. That silence was way scarier than any actual fight, and it was clear that Feathergale wasn't surprised at all. Daisy realized right then that to survive in this house, you need nerves of steel, and her boss had plenty to spare. Feathergale stamped a document and told Daisy to follow her, leading her down the long hallway in total silence. Daisy was spiraling, convinced she was about to get fired for the mess, just when she was finally getting the hang of things. But then her boss stopped and told her something she never expected to hear, that she actually meant quite a bit to the estate. It wasn't because of her amazing maid skills though, it was because she was the only person who managed to last more than a week. Turns out the bar for success was a lot lower than Daisy ever imagined. Feathergale wanted to show some real appreciation for Daisy's hard work, so she offered her a very special reward. She asked if Daisy wanted to finally meet the master of the house, the mysterious Viscount Weatherwoods. Daisy didn't even hesitate. She was all in, shouting that she'd definitely see him. But there was a catch. Meeting the boss meant getting tied to the family for the rest of her life. She was basically signing a lifetime contract without even realizing what she was getting into. Daisy was over the moon because in her head, life employment meant she could beat up spies and never get fired. She was so pumped that she grabbed her boss and shouted that she was definitely seeing him. Feathergale had to step in and remind her to actually use some manners, since she was acting a bit too intense. Daisy tried again, but she still sounded way too aggressive. For a formal meeting, her boss finally had to give her the exact script, telling her to say she'd be honored instead of just sounding like she was ready for a fight. Daisy wasn't just giving her a script, she was demanding a total vow of silence. Nobody could know a single thing about her master. But then she dropped the real bombshell. She'd be the one casting the spell. And Nat couldn't believe it. Since when did this woman use magic? There was no time to ask questions. The ritual was already starting. The magic was real, and there was no turning back now. She called out the name, demanding a promise to keep the family secrets buried forever. The maid didn't even flinch. She just gave her word, like it was nothing. But as the spell took hold, something felt off. She looked at the girl and realized the truth. This wasn't her first time making a blood vow. A vow like this isn't just a promise. It's engraved on the soul, not the body. That means even if your face changes, the mark stays with you for the rest of your life. Daisy knew there was no point in asking any more questions. The magic would have blocked the answers anyway. She reached for the door and told the girl it was time to go in. The real meeting was finally about to happen. The room was pitch black until a single flame cut through the shadows. Daisy stepped forward and told the girl it was time to show some real respect. The maid could barely find her voice as she looked around the massive hall. Then Daisy said the name. That changed everything. This was the man behind it all, Baron Grey Weatherwoods. She sat there in silence, just staring at the ground, lost in her own head. She'd seen it all before, the chaos of the world, and the faces of people she'd never meet again. On the battlefield, life and death cross paths every single day, and nothing usually surprises her anymore. But she had to admit, this was a first. In all her years, she'd never come across anything like this egg. Whatever was inside, it was about to change everything she knew. According to the head maid, this egg isn't just a decoration, it's actually the legal heir, entrusted to them years ago. Back then, it was even smaller, but it carried the weight of the entire family name. That means the fortune and the Rosebell title all belong to this egg, leaving Lady Anat with nothing but a name. The money is completely tied up because of a contract, and the fact that the Count is still alive and well. Daisy started to wonder if all that hidden gold is the real reason the assassins are coming for them now. From the outside, this place looks totally broke, like they don't have a cent to their name. But Count Rosebell isn't just some random noble, he's a hardened veteran who fought right alongside the legendary Sword Saint. If he found out assassins were after his gold, he definitely wouldn't just sit around and watch. The maid looked at the shell, and a wild thought hit her. Wait, is the master actually inside this egg? Daisy just nodded and said it's likely, since you can actually feel a pulse if you touch it. It's been growing for years, acting like a barrier to keep whatever's inside safe from the world. The maid couldn't help it. She started imagining a giant chicken bursting out of that shell, claiming to be the Baron. She quickly snapped out of it when she realized Daisy was right. The shell is just a shield, keeping the Baron safe. Now the only question is, when is he actually going to wake up? She's already decided that once he's back, she's gonna ask him for a lifetime contract as his personal maid. But then, something else crossed her mind. The maid looked down at the tiny sprout, wondering what she should call it. But then, a dark thought crept in. If she only has 3 years left to live, does she even have the right to name something new? Right then, Ludid leaned out the window and shouted for her to come inside for lunch. He warned her that if she didn't hurry, they were gonna eat every last bite without her. That seemed to snap her out of it. She looked up with a sudden spark and told them she finally picked a name. She decided to call the little sprout Rue, but Ludid immediately thought the name sounded way too familiar. He started teasing her, asking if she was finally admitting to being his biggest fan. But she had a much deeper reason. She figured if the plant shared his name, he'd actually take care of it. After she was gone, she started talking to the little pot, asking if it liked the name, and promising that the master would look after it. Ludid just watched her with a smirk, asking if she really liked the plant enough to hug and kiss it. The maid was completely speechless. She couldn't believe This guy was actually making fun of her. Daisy finally stepped in to break it up, telling everyone it was time to eat, and for Mr. Rue to stop his teasing. She gave the maid a little advice, telling her not to let Luted's constant jokes get to her head. Once they finished, Daisy asked her to head over to the sewing room for a quick errand, but Luted just had to get the last word in, telling her to buy something besides potatoes. While she was out, the maid realized she had to stay strong if she wanted her plant to actually thrive, so she made sure to finish every bite. She headed out to finish her errands, but the city was way louder than usual, with colorful flags hanging everywhere. Kids were running through the streets, playing pretend as famous commanders and high society ladies. She couldn't help but wonder if there was some kind of festival going on that she didn't know about. The maid stopped by a local shop and finally figured out what all the noise was actually about. A newspaper headline announced a massive peace festival, but the guest of honor was nowhere to be found. She froze when she saw the photo of the Duke. He looked exactly like Andert, the man she'd been dealing with this whole time. While she was busy putting the pieces together, the butler back home was just happy to have some extra hands to help. Daisy stopped in her tracks when she saw the name Grand Duke Raffaello. He looks exactly the same as he did 4 years ago, but something's not right. How did the war even end? After I died? Does he hate me for breaking orders and leaving? Back then, he was the closest thing I ever had to a brother, but those days are gone, and I'm a different person now. What would he do if he found out the truth? Daisy forced herself to stop looking back and focus on the present. The whole town was buzzing because of the big festival. It's Peace Day, the anniversary of the victory in the Magic War, the very war she barely survived. The Empire has its heroes, but the locals are celebrating something else entirely. A group of thugs finally got what they deserved, and everyone got their money back. They're calling this mystery person a real hero. Daisy just stood there, listening to them praise her own secret work. The locals were so grateful, they wanted to put their hero's face on the front page of the paper. That was Daisy's cue to leave. Before anyone started putting the pieces together, she had to get back to work and keep her head down, because in this town, being a hero is the quickest way to get caught. Daisy followed a mysterious note straight to a local bar, but the welcome she got wasn't exactly low profile. The staff was waiting for her, calling her Captain Maid, like she was some kind of celebrity war hero. It turns out the butler had already set the stage, and he left one more message just for her. Whatever's written on this paper is about to change everything. The note was clear. Someone's coming to wipe out the entire estate just to find a hidden relic. Daisy finally had the proof, but the bar staff was a little too excited about their part in the plan. They were supposed to be gathering intel in secret, but looking at the mess they made, things definitely went sideways. Now she's got an assassin and a group of overeager spies to deal with. Daisy tried to tell her new crew to stop calling her captain, but they were way too deep into the spy game to listen. She had to make a quick exit and get back to the estate before anyone noticed. She was gone for too long. By the time she reached the gate, the secret agent was gone, and the professional maid was back on duty. She played it cool, showing off the groceries like she'd just been on a regular shopping trip. But with an assassin on the way, this peaceful routine isn't going to last long. Daisy thought she was finally back to her normal routine, but the other maid had a different plan in mind. She stopped Daisy in her tracks with a request so weird, she had to apologize before even saying it. She asked Daisy if she'd ever consider dressing up and going undercover as a man. Daisy was completely floored by the sudden suggestion, but little did the other maid know that's a role she's already played. Now the real question is, why does she need a man all of a sudden? Daisy's heart nearly stopped. She was sure her secret was finally out in the open. She thought they'd found out about her life as a man, but the other maid immediately started backtracking. She told Daisy to just forget the whole thing and let the idea go in one ear and out the other. It turns out it was just a random suggestion, and her double life is still safe for now. That was a close call, but she can't afford to let her guard down again. Daisy wanted a good reason for such a crazy request, and she finally got one, but it wasn't what she expected. The other maid wants her to attend the noble council and take the viscount's place at the big meeting. Daisy was about to ask why the boss couldn't go, until the truth finally hit her. Their viscount is currently nothing more than a smooth egg, and he can't exactly show up to council like that. Now it's all up to Daisy to pull off the ultimate disguise before the whole world finds out the truth. Just when they thought they were safe to talk, A new player entered the game, and he heard everything. Lu didn't miss a single word of their private conversation, and he's clearly enjoying every second of their panic. He couldn't believe his ears when he heard the master of the house was an egg, and he's not letting them go. He wants the full story, down to the last detail, and there's no way they're getting out of this. The secret is officially out, and with Lu involved, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated. Lu isn't letting this go. He wants the full story, and he wants it now. Daisy tries to play it cool, claiming he just misheard something about an egg dish, but Lu's way too sharp. If it's just about food, why are they whispering? The pressure is on, and these maids are running out of excuses. Lu's playing along for now, joking about some secret recipe passed down through generations, but he's actually hunting. He spotted a mark on her wrist, and Daisy knows she's been caught. This guy is way too sharp. He saw exactly what she was trying to hide. Now he's switching tactics, putting on a whole performance about how hurt his feelings are. He's acting like a victim, just to guilt trip them into spilling the truth. Daisy isn't buying the act. There are only 3 of them here, and things are getting ridiculous. Since trust is an issue, Lu decides to up the ante by offering a formal oath. He's even willing to help Daisy make her big debut into the noble circle. But then he shows them the real price he's paid, revealing glowing scars on his arm. He plays it off as proof that he's the best at keeping dangerous secrets. But looking at those marks, there's only one question left to ask. Just how many times has he had to fight for his life? Lu drops a total bombshell. He stopped counting his oaths after reaching 101. Daisy can't believe her ears. She's seen a lot in her time, but nobody carries that many secrets. Just what kind of person is she actually dealing with? But Lu doesn't stay serious for very long. He's already back to his old self. He's giving them a choice. Either they spill the truth, or he'll start another fake crying fit. The joke is over. He's ready for answers, and he's not taking no for an outgrowth. Lu finally reveals the prize, and he's acting like he's found a masterpiece. He's admiring the solid shell and the elegant curves, like it's some kind of treasure. But then his mood shifts, and he gets that look in his eyes again. Without a single word, he just smashes the thing right in front of them. Daisy's losing her mind. She can't believe he'd just destroy it like that. What was inside that shell, and why was Lu so desperate to break it? Lu thought he could just smash this thing open, but he was dead wrong. The moment it cracks, a security system kicks in, detecting the damage immediately. The whole room lights up as the artifact starts restoring its outer shell. The broken pieces actually fly back into place, like time is moving backward. It's completely self-healing, which means whatever's inside is being protected at all costs. Lu takes one look at the egg, and he's already disgusted by the perverted taste of it. He recognizes the magic. It's an eyeball made by a guy named Dion Ket. Daisy is completely floored. She thought this thing was just a protective tool, but now she's hearing an actual heartbeat coming from inside the shell. She's convinced the viscount is trapped right in there, waiting to be let out. Lu isn't waiting around to guess any longer. He's ready to see the truth. It's time to find out exactly what's hiding behind that pulse. Daisy can't believe her eyes. She's looking at a magic interpretation manual. She's never seen anything this detailed or complex in her entire life. Lu doesn't miss a beat. He's quick to remind her that he's a total genius. He explains that this tool has a much darker purpose than just being a shell. It's actually a trigger for a massive attack spell meant for total emergencies. That heartbeat Daisy heard wasn't the viscount at all. It was just a sensor pulse. The real danger is that this whole place is rigged to blow at any second. Lu drops the bad news. The viscount isn't in there, and he never was. Daisy looks totally lost, realizing all those years spent protecting an empty shell were completely pointless. But then her whole vibe flips in a heartbeat, and she starts losing it. She's suddenly obsessed with how Lu could possibly be this powerful at his age. She's rambling like a fangirl about his genius magic, and won't let him get a word in. Even the other maids think she's gone off the deep end with this sudden mage worship. But Lu isn't interested in the compliments. He's got something else on his mind. There's one specific detail that's been bothering him since the moment he arrived. Daisy's pretty sharp. She noticed Lu called Dion Ket that guy earlier. It's a weirdly casual way to talk about a legend, and she wants answers. Lu just gives her a look and asks if she's really that curious about it. Daisy doesn't need a confession. She can tell by his face that they definitely go back. But here's the crazy part. Dion Ket actually died way before Lu was even born. If they're really acquaintances, then Lu is hiding a secret that's centuries old. It turns out Dion Ket wasn't just some ordinary mage. He was way more dangerous. He actually mastered forbidden life extension magic, which explains why he was so wild. but Lou doesn't want to dwell on the past for too long. He's already moving on. Now that they've figured out who their employer really is, it's time to focus on Daisy. Lou's got a plan to help her make a massive debut into the high society noble circle. He's totally confident that his genius-level magic can handle any disguise. Daisy knows his skills are more than enough to fool every noble in the room, but she's still worried because there's one problem that magic just can't fix. Daisy's feeling pretty uneasy about heading into the noble circle all by herself. Annette has a solution, but it's definitely not what anyone expected. She suggests a marriage, putting someone by Daisy's side to keep the situation under control. Daisy's head is spinning. She's worried that being a wife means she'll have to quit her job. She's dedicated to the mansion, and she's not ready to give up on protecting the viscount yet. But Lou steps right in, telling her not to worry about any of that trouble. He's ready to play the part, but Daisy can't believe this is actually happening. Lou isn't just agreeing to the plan, he's taking it a step further. He makes a bold declaration. I'll do it. I'll be the viscountess. He's fully committed now, and with his magic, this mission is about to get wild. Feathergale finally arrived, right in the middle of the storm. He didn't come for a social visit, and Andert knew it. Something big was going down, and the look on his face said it all. The situation was a total mess. No supplies and no leader. The only option left was a literal suicide mission. Andert and Daisy knew there was no turning back now. The commander wasn't having it. He refused to send his men into a total death trap. But Andert had other plans, and he wasn't afraid to say it. If he was the one going, the odds of winning just went way up. The commander tried everything, even using a direct order to keep Andert by his side. But Andert just smiled. He was already gone. Right before his eyes, he started to vanish, leaving nothing but a memory. The Grand Duke woke up, haunted by that same dream, but there was no time to rest. Deshiro arrived with urgent news. The Emperor was making a move on the northern mines. It was a calculated play to force the Grand Duke back to the front lines. Deshiro uncovered a secret. A survivor was found on a remote island. Someone tried to bury the news, intercepting the message 3 separate times. But the real shocker was the survivor's face. She looked exactly like Andert. The Grand Duke didn't buy it. He was convinced it was just a look-alike. But Deshiro reminded him that Andert's only sister died a long time ago. He didn't want to hear any more of these rumors, so he shut the investigation down. But ignoring the truth won't make it go away. Daisy finally found it, the legendary relic, known as the Eye of Dion Ket. She was already planning to steal it secretly, since she needed its power. But as she stood there, lost in her own head, someone opened the door. It was Ludid, and he caught her at the worst possible time. Ludid didn't give Daisy any time to think. He just told her to follow him. She thought they were just running a quick errand, but he had other plans. He led her straight to a massive set of doors at a very mysterious location. Once they stepped inside, a woman greeted them like they were VIPs. Daisy had no idea what she was getting into. Ludid finally revealed his plan. He was getting Daisy ready for her big debutante ball. Daisy was worried about the cost, but Ludid just laughed it off. Since he's incredibly rich, he started listing off an insane amount of clothes, from ball gowns to everyday wear. He gave the tailor only 15 days to finish the entire order. The poor woman was speechless. That's an impossible deadline for any normal shop. As soon as Ludid mentioned the Weatherwoods family, the entire shop went crazy. The manager saw a chance to make a fortune and offered to visit the mansion. But Ludid stopped her. He didn't want anyone snooping around the estate. Instead, he pointed at Daisy and told them to use her as a model for the measurements. Daisy was completely blindsided. Now she's stuck being a human mannequin. Daisy immediately got suspicious. She realized the clothes were being fitted to her size. Ludid explained his plan. He was going to use magic to change her entire physique. He wanted her body to match his own build, to make the disguise perfect. But Daisy wasn't having it. She'd much rather stick to her usual male disguise. She told him straight up that he was just too big, in way too many ways. Ludid took that comment personally. He leaned in close to ask what exactly was too big. He quickly got back to business, ordering a suit for a tall man with a very specific muscular build. He couldn't help but mock Daisy for having such bad taste in wanting a puny body type. The tailors were totally confused, but they didn't dare argue with a client this rich. Something about him felt different, and the shop staff was starting to get creeped out. The tailor was totally obsessed. She couldn't stop gushing over how perfect they looked. Annette tried on everything, from elegant silk dresses to bold off-the-shoulder styles. She looked every bit like a high society noble, ready to command the room. But when Ludid stepped out, the entire staff just froze. He looked almost too good. The tailor lost her words, because honestly, he looked absolutely unreal. The transformation was finally complete. and the tailor was so moved, she was practically in tears. She couldn't stop gushing about how they looked like the most perfect pair. Ludid and Daisy stood there, looking like total royalty, in their new high-end gear. The disguise was flawless, and nobody would ever guess the secrets they were hiding. They were officially ready, but the real mission was only just beginning. Daisy was finally out on her big mission, but it wasn't what she expected. This was way worse than work. She'd rather be back home, scrubbing floors all day, than dealing with this endless dressing up. Ludid noticed she was fading, so he tried a different approach. Should I perhaps buy you some ice cream? But Daisy wasn't buying it. She knew him too well. What are you trying to make me do now? Ludid wasn't even trying to hide it. The stick and the carrot go hand in hand. Why else would you give treats to a dog? Daisy couldn't believe his nerve. Am I a dog to him? But she still followed his orders anyway. He told her to wait quietly in the shade while he handled things, but Daisy wasn't the type to just sit around. She started wandering into a part of town she'd never seen before, until she found a sign for a national memorial. It looked like a cemetery for the Allied forces, but before she could explore any further, she remembered her orders. Lu told me to wait, but what was a place like this doing here? Ludid's voice cut through the air. Hey, where are you looking? But Daisy wasn't listening anymore. Something about that place was calling to her. She walked right up to the memorial gate, ignoring the warnings ringing in her ears. She reached out to touch the cold metal, but she had no idea what she was about to find. The quiet cemetery suddenly vanished, replaced by the screams of a dying army. Andert was right there, in the middle of the hell he'd tried to forget, as everything burned around him. Pull yourself together, his comrades shouted, but the situation was already hopeless. There were too many in the Mephisto Legion, and the ground was soaked with the blood of his men. We have to give up, someone yelled. We need to get the civilians out of here. But for Andert, the nightmare was only just starting. Andert refused to listen. What are you talking about? Grab onto me, quickly. But the soldier knew it was the end. I'm already a goner. Tell my mother my final goodbyes. Andert snapped. Cut the bullshit. You can tell her yourself when this war ends. But a cold voice shattered the memory. No, Daisy, the war is over. The nightmare was gone, but the pain felt just as real as the day it happened. Andert was still screaming. Can't you see the demons? Help me move the wounded. But Ludid's voice was like a cold anchor. There is no demon legion. It's time to come back. Daisy looked down at the man in her arms, but as she watched, he started to crumble. Is it really over? She whispered, as the nightmare turned to dust. Ludid stood his ground. Yes, no one else is going to die. The ghosts of the past were finally fading, but the truth they left behind was heavier than ever. Ludid didn't let the darkness linger for another second. The only thing dying here is this ice cream, he said with a straight face. It was a ridiculous thing to say, but it was exactly what she needed to hear to snap back to reality. He reached out his hand. Let's go home now. There's nothing left for you to see here. Daisy didn't say a word. She just leaned forward and let him catch her. As the world finally went quiet, the war was over. The ghosts were gone, and for the first time, she wasn't alone in the dark. Ludid closed his book with a smug look. I would have eaten it, but I was too busy carrying you home. Daisy couldn't even argue. He'd been by her side the entire time, nursing her back to health. Well, the servants did the work, he joked, referring to the butler and his crew of assassins. He even told the staff that Daisy was busy burying someone again and needed special education. Of all the excuses, she muttered, that's the one you went with? The danger was gone, but dealing with Ludid was going to be a whole different challenge. Daisy didn't hold back. She wanted to know if he was really there to steal the artifact from the viscount. But Ludid wasn't giving up his secrets that easily. You're just trying to get info for free, he teased. He leaned in close until there was no space left between them. Since you're so curious, I'll tell you one thing. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Don't fall for me. You'll only end up getting hurt. The air went cold, and just like that, the game they were playing became a lot more dangerous. Daisy wasn't in the mood for his flirting. When are you going to stop talking nonsense? She snapped. But Ludid turned serious. He wanted to know how often she had these hallucinations. The nightmares started a few days ago, she admitted, but today was the first time it felt this real. He asked if anything painful had happened to trigger all this, or if there was anything joyful to help her forget. Daisy went silent, searching for an answer, but she couldn't find a single happy memory to hold on to. Ludid sighed. You really don't have any answers for me, do you? Daisy insisted. that nothing special had happened lately, but he wasn't buying it. You just haven't realized it yet, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. He told her to close her eyes and look deep inside to find the truth she was hiding. Think about it, he whispered. What am I? As the world faded, Daisy was left with one single question. Who was she, really? As she looked inward, the pieces of her life started to shatter, revealing a truth she'd long forgotten. I am Daisy Fager, she told herself, the maid everyone knows. But the glass shifted, showing a man in a soldier's uniform, a man who was once called Andert, and even further back, before the wars and the disguises, there was someone else, a woman from a lifetime ago, a woman named Paki. The mask was finally falling away, but who was she supposed to be now? A name is usually a gift, something that gives you a place in this world, but for her, it was just a tool, the perfect way to hide. She chose the name Daisy because it was plain and easy to forget. She didn't want a legacy, she wanted to be a ghost, leaving no trace behind. But how long can you live behind a mask before you lose yourself? She actually liked this life, just a simple maid with a forgettable name. No more fighting, no more slaying demons, just dusting and cleaning. It was peaceful, being a normal person instead of a weapon. She wasn't Andert anymore, and for the first time, she felt like she belonged. But can you really wash away a past covered in blood? The nightmares still come back, reminding her of the friends she watched fall in battle. But it wasn't just the pain, she actually missed the rush, the thrill of crushing her enemies. She spent 14 years as Andert, and she can't just pretend that part of her is dead. She's supposed to be Daisy now, but she feels like a total fraud, just a wretched maid playing a part. Does she even care about this new life? Or is she just waiting for the next fight to begin? The shopkeeper asked if this was the one she wanted. It's a perfect flower for spring. But Daisy didn't care about the season or the look. She just liked the name. She wasn't just buying a plant, she was planting a new version of herself in the dirt. It's not that she hated the person she used to be, the soldier known as Andert, but that life is sinking now, buried deep under the surface. So this new Daisy can finally grow. But can a single flower really cover up the shadow of a legendary knight? The other maid snapped. That's 10 things you've broken. Daisy just couldn't get it right. But in that moment, everything started to click. Every version of her life was layering together. The soldier and the maid, the past and the present. It was all the same person. It was all just her. She didn't need to choose between being a weapon or being a normal girl. She just had to be better than she was yesterday. She finally gets it now. The mask is gone, and she knows exactly who she's supposed to be. But now that she's whole, is the world ready for the real Daisy? Her soul used to feel like it could shatter at any moment. But something changed. Everything feels solid now, like she's finally becoming whole. Ludid watched her and asked if she'd ever felt this unity before. She had no idea what he was talking about until he explained the truth. This is the first step to becoming a half-god, and Daisy just started her climb to the top. She's only a beginner, but the power inside her is already starting to wake up. Daisy couldn't believe it. A half-god? Like the legends? She wanted to know why he was picking her. Ludid didn't blink. He could tell she was a high-level swordmaster, and wondered why her teacher never mentioned the basics. That's when it hit her. She never told him about her life on the battlefield. How did he know her secret? He just gave her a smirk and said it's a secret. He's clearly enjoying how flustered she's getting. He'd love to keep teasing her, but there's something else he needs to show her first. The sun finally came up, and the dream was over. Ludid told her it was time to face the real world. The head maid was waiting, with a smile that meant trouble. She warned Daisy that one more late start would cost her her wages. Daisy was screaming inside. Her hard-earned money was on the line. It didn't stop there though. Now she has to spend every single lunch break learning noble etiquette. There goes her free time and her sanity. Being a legendary swordmaster doesn't pay the bills. A few days went by, and Daisy realized that having time to think is a luxury maids can't afford. She decided to use some transformation magic. It's not the most powerful spell, but it gets the job done. When she looked in the mirror, she couldn't believe her eyes. The transformation was perfect. She looked like a total stranger. Elegant blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and hands so clean, they've clearly never worked a day in their life. Lou really outdid himself. He turned her into the perfect nobleman. Now the real mission begins. The disguise was perfect. She looked exactly like a high-class noble from the Weatherwoods family. But even in these fancy clothes, she couldn't forget the truth. On the inside, she's still just a maid who's one mistake away from a major pay cut. She told herself to be bold, since there's no turning back now. The die is cast, and she has to play the part. of a sophisticated gentleman. She wasn't even worried. She figured if things got messy, Lou would just step in and fix everything like always. But before she could finish that thought, reality hit her right upside the head. Just when things couldn't get any weirder, this stunning beauty showed up out of nowhere. She looked like a dream, but don't let the looks fool you for a second. It's actually just Lou, pulling off another disguise. He's clearly enjoying this a little too much. He told Anders to stay focused and act like his woman for the rest of the night. But Daisy had to remind him of one very important detail. She's currently a man. They're supposed to be working together, but they can't even agree on who's playing which part. Lou was really feeling himself, leaning in close and acting like the ultimate beauty. He asked if his new look was enough to take anyone's breath away. Anders didn't even know how to respond, but Lou wasn't done teasing. He pointed out that, in her current state, she's neither a man nor a woman. That makes her dangerous. She's got enough charm to attract absolutely everyone, which means she has to be twice as careful tonight. One wrong move, and the whole act falls apart. They have to stay in character, no matter what happens. Because from this moment on, she isn't just a maid in disguise, she's the one and only Morian Sereni. The identity Lou stole wasn't just some random girl. He picked the third daughter of a powerful count from the Northern Union. Daisy was totally against it. She didn't think they could just go around stealing people's entire lives like it was nothing. But Lou didn't listen. He just brushed it off and said everything would be fine. His secret weapon? He didn't even try to persuade the girl. He just forced her to swear a magical oath to stay out of the way. Daisy realized right then that Lou is just lazy. Whenever he doesn't feel like talking his way out, he just uses magic to shut people up. The carriage was ready, and the stakes couldn't be any higher. The head maid begged them to come back in one piece and protect the family name. Anders tried to keep the act going, asking his dear if she heard the instructions, but Lou was already way ahead of him. He didn't want to be just called dear. He insisted on being called Morian, and he said it with a look that could melt anyone. He's taking this newlywed act to a whole new level. He promised they'd be the most passionate couple the world has ever seen. The mission is officially on, and with Lou's acting, things are about to get very intense, very fast. The carriage ride was supposed to be quiet, but Lou had something heavy on his mind. Morian wasn't making it easy, forcing him to beg just to get an answer to one simple question. She finally gave in, explaining how becoming a demigod can fix any physical wound and heal the body completely. But then she asked the one thing that changed everything: can it heal the soul too? Because if the magic is strong enough to crack the soul itself, there might be no coming back. Morian saw right through him, mocking his big dreams of becoming a demigod. Just because of one lucky break, she didn't hold back, calling his goals empty hopes and telling him to stay grounded because reality was about to hit. Lou couldn't even argue. She was just too sharp and knew exactly what he was really after. The carriage finally stopped as they reached the city, and the playful bickering was officially over. Morian said coldly, "It's time to work. Make sure you handle the task exactly like I told you." The games were finished, and now the real mission was beginning. Lou finally put the pieces together, realizing everything that happened was part of a bigger plan. He turned to Rugal, asking if it had really been 9 whole years since that unforgettable day. It was the day Natasha, the greatest mage of the forces, was officially named the crown princess of the empire. The ceremony was simple because of the ongoing war, but nobody expected what was about to happen next. Natasha looked at Anders, reminding him of his promise to give her any gift she wanted to celebrate. Anders didn't hesitate, saying he'd give her anything as long as it wasn't something impossible like a star. So she took him at his word and dropped a bombshell. "Then marry me." Right there in front of everyone, the new crown princess got down on one knee and proposed to a commoner. She promised to spend her entire life protecting him, leaving the whole empire in absolute shock. Lou was still lost in his own world, wondering how Natasha was doing after all this time. But Morian wasn't about to let him daydream, calling him out with a sharp honey. He tried to play it off like it was nothing, but she knew exactly what was on his mind. She leaned in close and dropped a threat that made him realize just how dangerous she was. If he stepped out of line, she promised to cut off something he'd definitely miss, leaving him questioning everything. So this was married life, a constant walk on the edge of a knife, while everyone else watched. They finally arrived at the airship platform, turning every single head. As they walked through the crowd, people couldn't stop whispering about how beautiful she looked, completely unaware of the terror she just put into her husband. The staff was clearly on edge, stuttering as they welcomed The fake viscount and his lady, they didn't waste any time, heading straight for the banquet, while the servants scrambled to handle their luggage. Lou kept it brief, giving a simple yes, as they were led down the long luxury hallway. The moment of truth was finally here, as the attendant reached for the massive gold handles. The doors swung open, and their names echoed through the entire hall, announcing their arrival. Lord and Lady Weatherwoods were officially in the building, and now there was no turning back. The whispers started the second they walked in. Everyone was shocked to see the mysterious viscount finally showing his face, but it was his wife who really stole the show. The crowd couldn't stop talking about her beauty as they moved through the hall. Lou was starting to sweat, telling Morian she was drawing way too much attention to their little group. She just laughed it off, telling him to stop complaining, since he was lucky enough to have such a gorgeous wife. But Lou had a much bigger problem on his hands. He suddenly remembered the training Daisy gave him back at the mansion. She'd spent so much time making him memorize every single noble's name so he wouldn't blow his cover. The only problem was he hadn't reviewed a thing, and now he couldn't remember a single person in the room. He had to do something before the silence got awkward, so he just picked a target and hoped for the best. You there? The man standing right in front of him wasn't just any noble. He was Count Rosabelle, the real Viscount's father-in-law. Lou recognized him in an instant. The hair was grayer, but those sharp eyes hadn't changed one bit. He was frozen until Morian gave him a sharp pinch on the arm, reminding him he had a role to play. He quickly recovered, greeting the Count like an old family friend, and mentioning his aunt Anat to smooth things over. The flattery worked, and the old soldier seemed to soften up once Lou started calling him a legendary hero. Then it was Morian's turn, introducing herself as a noble from Astrasa who'd traveled across the world just to be here. She played the part of the devoted wife perfectly, saying she'd go anywhere for the sake of her beloved husband. But something about that one word seemed to strike a chord, leaving the Count looking more than a little suspicious. Lou could feel the heat coming off the old man. The Count was a legend for being a total hardliner who never accepted excuses. Back in the day, he ran his unit with an iron fist, demanding perfection from every single soldier. Even his closest friends weren't safe from his rules. One wrong move, and you'd be cleaning the entire barracks alone. Lou realized he was in a really tight spot. The man he was playing had basically ruined the Count's daughter's life. He'd spent her fortune and didn't even bother to send an invite to their own wedding. No wonder the old man looked ready to snap. Lou played it cool, offering a quick apology for the messy situation while trying to ignore the intense stare. Surprisingly, the Count backed off. He was just glad the family name survived, even if he didn't like the man holding it. He gave them a warning to watch their backs, since not everyone would be as forgiving as he was being. Lou was just relieved to get out of there without a fight, but Morian knew they'd pushed their luck far enough for one night. She pulled him away, suggesting they head straight to their room before anyone else decided to test them. They couldn't even walk down the hall without getting mobbed. Every noble in the place wanted a piece of the Viscount. It was a non-stop parade of introductions and fake smiles until they finally reached their room. The second the door closed, Lou just gave up. He crashed onto the bed, completely wiped out from all the acting. Being a maid was hard, but pretending to be a high-ranking noble was a whole different level of exhaustion. He told Morian to wake him up before the banquet started, and she just nodded while sipping her tea. He figured he could finally get some peace and leave the worrying to someone else for a change. But as he drifted off, something felt wrong. His arm felt strangely heavy, like something was holding him down. What was happening to his body? Lou finally opened his eyes, but something was way off. The room was way too bright for a quick pre-banquet nap. He was still groggy, trying to figure out how much time had passed, until the reality of the situation hit him. It wasn't evening anymore. The sun was already up, meaning he'd slept straight through the night and missed the entire party. But that wasn't even the biggest problem. As he turned his head, he realized he wasn't in that bed alone. Morian was right there, lying next to him, with a look on her face that said she'd been awake for quite a while. He was completely frozen. How did they end up in this position, and what exactly happened while he was out cold? Jin couldn't believe his eyes, and his scream totally ruined the moment. Anat smiled down at him. Honey, are you awake? She didn't skip a beat. Stop making such a fuss. You're breaking my immersion. If you keep this up, I'll just throw you right off this airship. Jin tried to protest, but she wasn't listening. We're a newlywed couple, aren't we? He couldn't handle her logic, but Anat just leaned in closer, teasing him for being so clearly embarrassed. It's annoying seeing you act like that with a man's face, but I'll tolerate it, since you're my beloved viscount. He was totally speechless, as she finally pulled away. Go ahead and get up. Annette handed him the schedule, but it looked like nothing but parties and fun. She reminded him that for the nobility, socializing is the real work. Jin finally got the point, and he wasn't about to just sit around anymore. He got ready in a hurry, because there was something he needed to investigate. But where exactly was he headed? Jin finally connected the dots. The person who sent those assassins is a member of the council. The attack stopped the moment he showed his face in public, because now the enemy can just meet him directly. Annette was actually impressed. Our honey is quite smart, aren't you? Before he could even ask what she meant by that, she leaned in for a kiss. He was caught off guard, but the real game was only just beginning. Annette just smiled and wished him a safe trip, acting like nothing happened. But the second Jin stepped out that door, he completely lost his cool. He couldn't believe what just went down. That was way too much for a simple mission. He kept telling himself it was just an act, but his heart wasn't listening to reason. Now he had to focus. But how could he, after a move like that? Jin decided to play the part of the friendly neighborhood noble. He walked right up to a couple of guys and completely butchered their names on purpose. He even suggested they drop the formalities and just be friends, which totally threw them off. He casually asked about all the noise downstairs, acting like he was just passing through. He turned down their invite because he had a much bigger goal in mind. The whole place was buzzing. Everyone was there to see the legendary succession battle of the Grayton family. This house only cares about one thing: pure strength, regardless of age or blood. The current Grand Duke is the famous sword saint, and he's the one everyone has to impress. Jin looked down and couldn't believe his eyes. The crowd was cheering for the second in line. It was a silver-haired swordsman, using his own name, and he was right there, fighting in the arena. The crowd was losing it, watching the silver-haired swordsman dominate the arena. Everyone was calling him a total prodigy, saying his skills were way beyond his years. Oster could barely hang on, as the strikes kept coming, faster than he could see. But the real mystery was those piercing eyes, and the cold intensity behind every single move. Jin just watched from above, seeing someone else play his own role better than he ever did. They call them sword demons, people who live and die by the blade alone, without any cheap tricks. Daisy was busy making a secret deal to take down the head of the assassination guild. She claimed that if Jin lost his rights, the Reapers chasing her would finally disappear. She even offered a lead on the mysterious Master Lu as a reward for getting the job done. Jin just stood there, listening to the whole plot, wondering how a guy like that could ever be missing anything at all. Jin was still trying to figure out Daisy's plan when a voice started screaming from the arena. It was loud and aggressive, demanding a real fight, but the silver-haired guy didn't even open his mouth. That's when it clicked. The voice wasn't coming from the fighter at all. It was coming from the sword. The blade seemed to have a mind of its own, begging for more blood and more action. Oster completely lost it and charged right in, but he had no idea what he was actually up against. Oster didn't stand a chance. The fight was over before it even started. Jin couldn't believe it. This guy wasn't just a fake. He'd reached a level of mastery where he could actually hear the voice of the blade. Then the imposter looked up and dropped a total bombshell right in front of everyone. He introduced himself as Jin Berkeley Grayton, stealing the name and the title without even blinking. Now he's looking for a chat, and the real Jin has nowhere left to hide. Jin's closing in, and he wants answers right now. But Gray isn't ready to talk, so he decides to play dirty. He puts on his best smile and drops a total bombshell. I'm sorry, but I'm already a married man. Now everyone's losing it, and the real chaos is just getting started. He actually did it. Gray just rejected Jin right in front of everyone. Jin's completely stunned, and honestly, nobody saw this coming. Gray's acting cool, but on the inside, he's totally losing his mind. His friends can't believe he's just sitting there, acting like nothing happened. But they know the truth. Jin isn't like other girls, and this rejection is going to have consequences. Everyone knows Jin. She's a total sword fanatic who doesn't care about anything else. But Gray knows better. Something's just not adding up. He's got secret intel that Jin is actually the head of an assassination guild. It's way too risky for a professional killer to draw this much attention. She's definitely hiding something, and Gray's determined to find out her real motive. His friend snaps him out of it. Gray, what are you thinking about? He's playing a dangerous game, and one wrong move could change everything. Gray's done playing it safe. He's going all in and becoming the bait himself. He plays it off like it's just a random thought, but he's already moving. By day, he's just another noble, hanging out at the opera. But when the sun goes down, he's locked away with Lu, playing a much deeper game. He's not just slacking off. He's been busy, collecting the missing pieces. He's finally got the proof. 3 major leads, that change everything. Here's the deal. Jin can't take over her family, because of one man. His name is Garrosh, and he's a total monster. Jin's never beaten him, not even once. Maybe that's why she started her own guild, just to build up her own power. Next, there's the connection between Yejersey and Lu. Gray's starting to think Lu's fake identity isn't just a coincidence. He's gotta be careful. If Lu finds out, he's digging into her past. It's game over. And then, there's the big one. Gray looks at his friends and drops a name they weren't expecting. Have you guys ever heard of the artifact of Dion's sect? The room goes quiet. This is the missing piece he's been looking for. Gray plays it cool, making up a story about his wife-loving treasure. He's just testing the waters to see what they know. But his friends immediately get serious and tell him to drop it. Apparently, some very powerful VIPs are hunting for that same artifact. That's exactly what Gray wanted to hear. It confirms his theory. The person behind everything is right here on this airship. He's been making enough noise to get their attention. Now, he's just waiting for them to make the first move. The plan is working. Gray's become the main event. At the gambling table, everyone's watching him, placing bets, and trying to get close. His friends are starting to get a little worried about all the attention. But Gray just laughs it off, playing the part of the arrogant noble. He jokes that maybe he's just too handsome for his own good. His friends aren't buying it, but they have no idea. This is all a trap. He's right where he wants to be, in the spotlight, waiting for the enemy to bite. Folkwin's had enough of Gray's ego. It's time for a reality check. He calls over Yejersey to help explain how the ship actually works. On the Black Label, titles don't mean everything. There's a hidden ladder. Sure, you've got your nobles and your upper class, but some commoners have more money and power than the people with crowns. It's a messy system where wealth is the only thing that talks, and there's a specific reason why everyone's suddenly so interested in Gray's game. He's about to find out exactly what's at stake behind these cards. Folkwin explains that everything comes down to picking a side. Did your family fight in the war, or just stay quiet? Are you with the Emperor, or are you backing the Archduke's faction? In this world, your reputation is built on who you follow. Then comes the big question, where exactly does Gray Weatherwoods fit in? It's a total mystery. He fought in the war, but walked away with nothing. He hasn't made a move, or joined a side, since the fighting ended. In a game where everyone's a king or a jack, Gray is the joker. He's the wild card that nobody knows how to play. Folkwin points out the weirdest thing about Gray's social life. He's a noble who'd rather hang out with commoners than elites. That kind of behavior makes people talk, and it makes them curious. Gray realizes he's accidentally created the perfect trap. He's the ultimate bait, standing right there in the middle of the room. But none of this matters if the real target doesn't show up. Everything's on the line. But will Jin actually take the bait? Just as Gray's getting into the game, someone leans in close. It's a total stranger, mocking his cautious playing style. Gray freezes as he hears the name, Berkeley Grayton. He remembers the warning he got from the butler earlier. He had a feeling things would end up exactly like this. The bait worked, but now he's face to face with a dangerous man. It's a pleasure to meet you, Viscount Weatherwoods. The real game is finally starting. The stranger finally drops his name, Duke G. Hark Berkeley Grayton. Gray keeps it cool and introduces himself as just a simple noble. But inside, his mind is racing with old memories. This man was his master, the one who taught him how to use a sword. They weren't just friends, they were comrades who survived the battlefield together. The Duke smiles and calls him by his real title, the Sword Saint. It's a formal greeting, but they both know the truth behind it. Gray knew this reunion was bound to happen sooner or later. The past is catching up, and there's no way to outrun it now. It all started with him, the legendary Sword Saint, G. Hark Berkeley Grayton. Back then, Andert learned everything from the best masters in the Empire. They fought through hell, surviving side by side on the bloodiest battlefields. Every single memory is still so vivid and so precious, but those memories are about to become his greatest weapon. Even a reunion like this feels like a gift after everything they've been through. G. Hark turns to the Viscount and asks for a private moment to talk away from the crowd. Feathergale agrees, but something feels off about the way he's acting. Gray can sense it, even if he's not on their level yet. There's a hidden edge, a sharp killing intent behind that calm face. The truth is finally out. the legendary sword saint, is the real client. Jihark smiles and says, it wouldn't be hard at all to set up a duel. He asks Gray to give his daughter Jin a little bit of training, but Gray finally sees the dark truth behind the sword saint's plan. The law says the emperor's sword can't lead a private army, but Jin isn't a duke yet, so she's the perfect loophole for her father to use. She's just a puppet on a string, controlled by his every move. It's official. The sword saint is the real mastermind behind the organization. Gray knows he's dealt the worst possible hand, and there's no easy way out. Feathergale tries to step in, telling the Duke that he's got it all wrong. He claims Gray isn't even a swordsman, and shows off his soft hands as proof of his innocence. But Jihark isn't falling for the act, not even for a second. He looks the Viscount right in the eye, and asks if he's really going to use that excuse. The trap is set, and the pressure is only getting started. Gray stops playing nice, and decides to set his own terms for the duel. He's got two conditions that change everything for the Sword Saint's family. First, the fight has to be private, with no one else watching, and second, if Jin loses, she loses her right to inherit the title. He says it's about honor, but everyone in the room can feel the tension rising. Feathergale can't believe the gamble Gray is taking right in front of the Duke. Then Jin walks in, and her father asks if she's ready to bet her entire future on this fight. Jin doesn't hesitate. She accepts the terms and bets her entire future on this one fight. Jihark agrees to move to a private location, just like Gray requested. But as Gray gets his sword ready, he realizes something chilling. The Duke didn't even put up a fight about the conditions. He's the kind of man you can never afford to underestimate. The stage is set, and there's no turning back now. Jihark plays the part of the perfect host, offering Gray a sword for the upcoming duel. He says it's because everything happens so fast, and Gray probably doesn't have his own. Gray takes the weapon and offers his thanks, but the mood shifts in a second. Jihark leans in with a look that says he's searching for something. He asks Gray if they've crossed paths somewhere before. Gray doesn't flinch. He just smiles back and says it's impossible. He claims this is their very first meeting, but the look in their eyes says something else entirely. Gray looks at the sword and immediately knows something is off. He doesn't trust the Duke, and he definitely doesn't trust this blade, so he makes a choice that catches everyone completely off guard. He tells Jin that if she can just make him draw the sword, the victory is hers. It's the ultimate insult, and Jin looks like she's about to snap. Jin isn't playing around. She accepts the handicap and charges in with everything she's got. She's determined to sweep anyone in her way aside, especially someone as arrogant as Gray. But even with all that momentum, Gray doesn't budge. He blocks her strike without even drawing his blade from its sheath. Jin is absolutely livid, and Gray can see it all over her face. She isn't just trying to win anymore. She's out for blood. Jin can't believe what's happening. She's trained against the best in the world hundreds of times, but Gray is moving on a completely different level. In one smooth motion, he knocks the sword right out of her hand and lands a heavy blow. Before she can even process the shock, it's already over. Gray has his blade right at her throat, and the message is clear. This fight is finished. Gray isn't holding back. He tells Jin exactly what's coming next, and it isn't pretty. He's ready to break her ankles and wrists, leaving her unable to even hold a pen. Jin finally realizes she's in way over her head, and she does the only thing she can do to survive. She admits defeat and gives up her right as the family heir, just like they agreed. Gray is satisfied, but before he can leave, Jin has one last question for the man who beat her. Jin is desperate to know how Gray got so strong at such a young age. Gray respects her passion, and he'd love to help, but he knows his path isn't one she can follow. He tells her straight up that she can't reach his level because he paid a price no normal person could handle. When she asks what it is, he just calls it a secret and keeps the truth buried deep inside. He can't exactly tell her that the secret to his power is that he already died once and came back for more. Jin makes a move nobody saw coming. She asks Gray to take her on as a disciple, but Gray isn't interested in playing teacher. He just walks out and shuts the door. He's got better things to do with his time, like finally getting along with Looted. But just as he's planning his next move, something stops him dead in his tracks. He realizes something he completely overlooked, and it changes everything. Gray walks right into a total disaster. Looted is leaning over an at in the middle of a room filled with flowers. It looks like a scene from a romance novel, but the timing couldn't be any worse. Looted doesn't even look bothered. he just smiles and says, "You're late, darling." Gray is standing there, completely speechless, trying to figure out what he's even looking at. The situation just went from complicated to absolutely insane. Andert walked right into the ultimate nightmare. Lou was just lounging there, acting like he owned the place. "You're late, darling." But the real problem was the woman in the bed. Is she even alive? Lou didn't seem worried. Not everyone is as tough as Miss Daisy. This whole scene was a total disaster, until a name finally clicked. Natasha. Everything started making sense, and it wasn't good. There's a catch to Lou's magic. He can't use other spells while he's transformed. That means this woman forced him into a corner where he had no choice. Andert finally got it. An assassination attempt? Lou just gave a cold smile. Correct. But why would she do it? Lou didn't have the answer yet, but he was about to get it. He reached out his hand. Let's just ask her ourselves. Lou didn't just wake her up. He used forbidden magic to take over her mind. Since you're so curious, Lou said with a smirk, why don't you ask her yourself? Andert didn't waste time. Why did you attack the Viscountess? What's your real objective? The answer changed everything. She wasn't targeting the Viscountess. She was there to monitor the entire noble assembly. And she wasn't alone. There are 12 of them, hiding in the shadows. The scale of this plot was way bigger than they thought. The truth finally came out, and it was worse than anyone imagined. The villa wasn't just being watched, it was a target for terrorism. While things were heating up at the villa, Jin was facing her own disaster. She walked into the room, ready to face the music. I have no excuse. Feathergale could see it, all over her face. This wasn't the result he was looking for. Jin didn't say another word, she just handed over her sword, accepting whatever comes next. Feathergale could tell Jin was hiding something. There was a connection there he couldn't quite pin down. He told her to keep training and sent her away, but his mind was already somewhere else. He looked at the sword. It seemed normal enough, but a real swordsman always leaves a trace behind. There was nothing here, no clues, no evidence of a struggle. That's when it hit him. If he wanted the artifact, the estate wasn't the key. He needed to look closer at the Viscount himself. There was something about him, a strange sense of familiarity that didn't make any sense. Feathergale had a gut feeling. The Viscount couldn't die, at least not yet. He wasn't going to wait forever though. That artifact had to be his. He called Jin back in and gave her a choice. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. He trusted her decision, but there was a catch. Everything came down to one single condition. Whatever he told her, it changed everything. The clock was ticking, and time was running out. Meanwhile, back at the villa, things were getting messy. The interrogation was over, but the real trouble was just getting started. The party was in full swing, high above the world. Everyone was dancing, without a care in the mind. It looked like a dream. The lights, the music, the perfect night. But the clock doesn't lie. Every second passing is bringing them closer to the end of the piece. The preparations are done, the stage is set, and the countdown has officially begun. Tomorrow, everything goes up in flames.